Madam Deputy Vice Chancellor, Deans, heads of department, colleagues, students, family and friends of Professor Ngcoza, ladies and gentlemen, Molweni, Goeienaand, bonsoir, goedenavond, good evening, and a very warm welcome to you all to Professor Ngcoza's professorial inaugural address. I wish to extend a very special welcome to his family who are with us this evening, and also his friends, collaborators, and research partners who have joined this special occasion via a virtual platform. This evening, as is our tradition at Rhodes University, we have the presentation of the inaugural lecture that follows the university conferring the status of full professor on an academic. An inaugural lecture marks a significant milestone in an academic's professional career. It is an occasion in which we, as academic peers, colleagues, students, family, friends, and the public celebrate the intellectual and scholarly achievements and contribution of one of our own. This evening, I have a singular honor of presenting to you one of our newest additions to the illustrious list of professors of Rhodes University, Kenneth Mlungisi Ngcoza. Professor Ngcoza, born and raised in our very own town, Makhanda, began his teaching career at Nombulelo Senior Secondary School. After qualifying as a math and science teacher, cum laude, from the Cape Teachers College in Fort Beaufort. He taught at Nombulelo Senior Secondary School for 9 years, during which period he completed his BSc degree at Rhodes University, majoring in mathematics and applied mathematics. He has done mathematics and applied mathematics. I think we need to He was promoted to the position of head of Department of Natural Sciences at Nombulelo. He left teaching to coordinate the science education project. Thereafter, he became a science subject advisor in the Grahamstown district, or as it was known then. I imagine it is Makhanda district now. As a science subject advisor, he was involved with the Curriculum 2005 workshops and the Kula project. With an ongoing focus on self-development, Professor Ngcoza continued his studies and received his Bachelor in Education cum laude from Rhodes University in 1996. He followed that with a master's degree in science education, also cum laude, in 1999, and completed his doctoral studies in science education in 2008. By 2001, Professor Ngcoza was a full-time staff member at Rhodes University's Faculty of Education. From science education lecturer to senior lecturer, and then to deputy head of department in 2013, a position he still holds to this day. Professor Ngcoza's research interests include science curriculum, transformative continuing professional development, indigenous knowledge systems, education for sustainable development, and citizenship education, and has published or co-published several journal articles and book chapters in these areas. You will also recall that he was a recipient, together with Mrs. Joyce Suri, of the Vice Chancellor's Distinguished Community Engagement Award in 2009. The two of them have been collaborators in science education for more than 2 decades. Professor Ngcoza is the chairperson of Gadra Education and a member of the Vice Chancellor's initiative to revitalize public education in Makanda. A very valuable member at that. His primary focus is science teacher education, both pre and in service, and as a supervisor for master's and PhD students. Professor Ngcoza has supervised or co-supervised and graduated 87 honors students, 80 master's students, and 5 PhD students. He is currently supervising or co-supervising 8 masters and 8 PhD students. He was just telling me that he is currently supervising this gentleman in front of us here, who is pursuing his 2nd PhD. Throughout his illustrious career, Professor Ngcoza has held many leadership positions. He's the recent president of SAMSTE, the South African Association for Research in Mathematics, Science and Technology Education. He's a current member of the African Association for the Study of Indigenous Knowledge Systems and coordinator of the Indigenous Knowledge Systems project at Rhodes University. Professor Ngcoza is also a member of the Mathematics, Science and Language Education project and an executive member of our Rhodes University Maths Education project, RUMEP, the Rhodes University Maths Education project. In fact, Professor Ngcoza has held many leadership positions at our university over the years. He has been on the Education Higher Degrees Committee since 2001, first as a member, and currently serves as the Deputy Chairperson. He's, of course, a member of our University Senate. In terms of student throughput and publications, Professor Ngcoza has been in the top 30 researchers no less than 3 times at Rhodes University. In 2018, Rhodes University recognized his extensive contribution by including his team's research story in the annual Rhodes University Research Report. Professor Ngcoza serves on the editorial board of the UK-based Research in Science and Technological Education Journal, and is a reviewer of several accredited journals, including the Research in Science and Technological Education Journal, the Southern African Journal for Environmental Education, and Cultural Studies of Science Education. Tonight, at this inaugural lecture, Professor Ngcoza will examine what it means to embark on the journey from poverty to university, and the challenges and opportunities that can be found along the way. He will outline some compelling stories of hands up and second chances strategies that have worked, and highlight what we can learn from some successful local community and Rhodes University strategies, and from individuals who have overcome obstacles. It is the story of many local high school learners who have studied and graduated from Rhodes University. And essentially, it is Professor Ngcoza's story too. Dear friends, colleagues, it is now my signal honor and a great privilege to invite Professor Kenneth Ngcoza to deliver his professorial inaugural lecture titled From Poverty to University, Journeys, Challenges, and Opportunities. Professor Ngcoza. Wow.
Thank you, VC, for your kind words. Our VC, Dr. Mabizela, DVCs, deans, HODs, road staff, honored guests, my family and friends, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to greet you all this evening. But of course, we need to pay tribute to those loved ones who succumbed to COVID-19. I would have loved to be here with us this evening. And we believe that their spirit is with us. Thank you, Dr. Mabizela, for your kind introduction and for your extensive research. I'm so impressed. I think you like the mathematics part of it. I'm really humbled by this honor. I must say, I have a lot to say about my names and surname, but time unfortunately does not allow. But I would like to add that in addition to being Kenneth Mlungisi Ngcoza, I'd like to add that my clan name is Ngcoza, and I'm married to Umamkwane. And if you like, I challenge the cultural stereotypes because I'm Ngcoza and she's Sutu. Indeed, my promotion and this evening is a significant milestone in my life. I believe that this is reflected in my title, From Poverty to University, Journeys, Challenges, and Opportunities. Poverty is more than food. It could be poverty in terms of education. I've used that as a metaphor. But before I proceed with my talk this evening, I would like to acknowledge many people who have supported me before and throughout this journey. I would have loved to mention all the names. I think I can make that document available, but I realize that I will take the entire 30 minutes of my presentation. Firstly, I would like to extend words of gratitude to my beloved mother, Makhatebe, and of course, my father, Ukaka. I've heard people in occasions like these saying that they so wish that their parents were here. Actually, they are here in spirit, even stronger than if they were living people. They've been supportive throughout my childhood years, and I always remember their teachings. If I had time, I would share some of these with you. My wife, Ubuntu, and the name speaks volumes. Who has been with me for 35 years now and not out. She is my pillar of strength. I don't know how she manages to support a busy man like myself, VC. You know, those 80 students I've graduated, they did not come the chance. But she once said something to me in 2005 when my mother passed away. She said, "Akuna tata, akuna mama, usheke namgo." I thought, coincidentally, we live in the Fort England area, a psychiatric hospital. And I nearly jumped over the fence and admit myself. I didn't understand what she meant until 16 years later. If you do the sums, 204 plus 16 is 2020, the most terrible year in all our lives. Very few people who practice what they preach. My son, Kosipendule, another name which speaks volume, but I won't tell you this evening. Thank you. You always make us proud. You are one too many. You once surprised us when and organized a surprise 25th anniversary for us, just before COVID, as if he knew. And we can't forget that. Also, he showed us last month that hard work, resilience, and determination play a pace, because he finished a 42-kilometer marathon in Cape Town. I think it deserves a big round of applause. But what will remain indelible to me about Kaka is when I was awarded the Citizen Year of Award by the Grahamstown Rotary Club. And that was 2010, and at that time he was doing grade 8. He wrote in his journal, I hope parents are listening to encourage children to write journals. When they announced that my dad had won, my family went crazy. I doubt that anyone would forget that moment. What I love is when my father started to speak in Ngcoza, showing that he's proud of his culture and is not embarrassed where he comes from. For me, hearing that statement from a child who's studying at a former modest school gives hope. It gives hope because the naked truth is that the independent schools, the former modest schools can have good education, but they can strip off some of our children's culture and identity, and they want to be something else. I'm reminded when I was in Russia with Professor Esther Ramani and Professor Michael Joseph, a blind and deaf professor who was using sense of touch for communication. He said, you may be blind, you may be deaf, you may be dumb, but if you have culture, you are complete. You are complete, my son, keep like that. My school teachers and lecturers, as I've said, I would have really liked to mention people by their names, but I have to single out my former physical science teacher, Mr. Rubin Matole Marcelo, was sitting over there. I'm proud of that man, and I'm sure he's proud of me. My three supervisors, Professor Yap Gabe, Mrs. Jill Bolt, and Prof. Pat Erwin, who is in our midst. I thank you very much for your guidance. I'm here today because of your wonderful and selfless support. And of course, I can't forget my critical friend, Dr. Sue Southwood, who's sitting over here. And please, those two papers that we co-published are a must-read papers. If you want them, give a shot. Postgraduate supervision team, wow, it's a big team, and our committee of practice. And of course, from our community, out of many people who made a difference and who are still making a difference in our lives, I'd like to sing out Mama Joyce Nolingo, Umamgwevu, who is with us here. You will hear more about Umamgwevu. That's a professor. RU Department, Education, Admin, and staff. My gratitude also goes to the 3 Rhodes chairs, work colleagues at Rhodes and beyond, Gadro family, broader academic community, Samste Eastern Cape chapter, Samste Research School, Samste ASICS, and of course some international academics, because I learned that for one to become an associate professor, you need some international connection. I would like to mention Professor Kensuke Shigemoto from Japan, Dr. Maran Sihawa, and Professor Tonya Uftaring from Germany, Professor David Stevenson from Brighton University, Dr. Carol Simmons, and Dr. Pam Dalton from USA. And of course, lastly, you've read that, you've heard the VC saying that I have been in the top 30 researchers at Rhodes, actually 4 times now VC. And you might clap for me if you like, but I do want to say the people we should be clapping for are my students, masters and PhD scholars. You will see there's a difference there that we refer to when you're at master's level, we no longer refer to you as a student, you are a scholar. So you must behave in a scholarly way. And those students have really taken me to the moon, the way we've been working together, the way we support one another. I really thank them. And I feel as if I have a table, not a chair, unlike my colleagues I acknowledged at the top. And I'm sure if there was a Springbok team for academics, I would make the squad. On merit, not affirmative action. Now I feel like singing. Wandi tatala, wandi tatala. That is not. Thank you very much. And that's how Africans celebrate, by singing. And that is not only a song. There's a theoretical framework in that song. Vygotsky's zone of proximal development and Brunner's scaffolding. It is in that song. Before I forget, because Ubuntu teaches us to appreciate other people's achievements and success stories. My students nominated me for a teaching award. They didn't know that they were taking a final decision. I didn't make it. It is not a disgrace to disclose when you have not made it, when you have failed. But Ubuntu teaches us to appreciate others, people's milestones and achievements. And I would like to congratulate the 3 whites who will be awarded the teaching awards next year. But I'm interested in the version of this song. I think they would have to climb on tables because they are not taken from here like me. They must be taken from here to there. That is the reality of our institution. But for those who did not make it, I want you to know this evening that our glory consists not in never falling, but in rising whenever we fall. Abanendlebe mabeve, abanamehlo mababone. Those who have ears should listen, and those who have eyes should see. We use that, we're guided by that African proverb in our endeavors to make a difference in this beautiful institution. If you want to walk fast, walk alone. However, if you want to walk far, walk together. You will see when I share the stories with you that what is applicable to us is the last sentence. The VC has mentioned my topic, and it's around stories. Stories of journeys of offering a hand up and a second chance in education. As you all might know, Ubuntu storytelling entails people sitting around the fire, getting equal heat. That's another metaphor. We're talking about inclusivity and transformation in our university. We're talking equal education. Ubuntu entails, and knowledge and wisdom are passed on in the form of stories. You have to listen so that you can retell those stories. Most importantly, Ubuntu means connectedness and humble togetherness, as we are today. I promise to share 3 stories for you. One, my own story. The second one, the Gadra and Rhodes partnership. And the last story about the hand up for our in-service and second chance teachers. I do want to emphasize that although I've numbered these stories 1, 2, 3, as if it's position 1 and 2 and 3 in class, they are actually interlinked, as you will see. My own story, this time from poverty to professor. As the VC mentioned earlier on, I was born in the late 1950s in Victoria Road. We call it Ngcoza in Fingo Village. We lived in a house made of poles and mud mixed with cow dung, and the roof had old corrugated iron. For ceiling, we used old cupboards. And my mother used cow dung as floor polish. Top of Victoria Road, there's a mountain which is called Intabaya Zone. If you translate it, mountain of sins, something that contradicts with the city of saints across the Kawi River. The Kawi River separates the haves this side and the have-nots that side. And that's where I learned to swim. Cry the beloved country. Go and look at that river now. Rhodes University was then a faraway promised land, which was never to be reached. This is not a fairy tale. I tried in the 1970s to come and study in my university, which is about 3 kilometers from home. And I had to apply to Pretoria. I was rejected. Isn't that nice that now I'm a professor in the very institution which rejected me? Perhaps it was not Rhodes that rejected me, but it was the apartheid government, because it wanted to keep us apart. My mother was a domestic worker and my father was a laborer on the railways. I remember my mother worked at number 7 Ailey Street, and she worked for Mrs. Fitzgerald. who was a school principal at VP. I know academics like validation and trustworthiness. You can go and at VP and look for Miss Sarah, or you can drive next to Ngcoza to see if is there, if is there a number 7. Push. See, that's what technology. I remember there were times when you go to conferences, you had to carry transparencies and we apologize for that. Thank you very much. But why is this not moving now? Okay, thank you very much. So I was just telling you about my mother. So I remember being the last born, I had to run to her work every morning to get the bread she was going to eat. And she sacrificed that bread for us. The emphasis here is not on the bread, it's on the word sacrifice. And then we would eat again when she came back with the leftovers. And the leftovers have produced a professor and the past president of SAMSTE. Ngcoza, Ngcoza, uyas. Thank you. Thank you. But what shaped my journey from Fimbo village across the great economic, social, psychological, and cultural divide to the faraway university across the river? It was very far. It was miles away. My mother, Makhadewe, paid for all school books and school fees out of her limited wages. School books that I owned became a little library at home for other children also to use. There was a culture of reading. We need to bring back the culture of reading. Home was not only home for all of us. I remember bees came to our one-room house one day. And bees to us children were a symbol of fear and pain. But when my mother came back from work, she said, we don't kill bees, they are indwendwe visitors. And they bring good news. Perhaps they were bringing good news about Ken becoming a professor one day, I don't know. She had to make umqombothi to thank the ancestors. And when umqombothi was ready, I regret I did not watch when she was making. They invited our neighbors to come and celebrate with them. And they sang songs. And one of the songs I remember used to say, Ngcoza, Ngcoza, So we were taught that when you go to another person's house, you need to know and you need to greet. Greeting is a good thing as part of respect. We children joined in the singing and dancing. I also used to collect wood where Graham College is. By the way, that was a forest, my son. I used to collect wood, firewood from there. My mother would make a bundle of wood for me and for herself. And then she would take a piece of cloth and put it on top of my head and then put the bundle of wood. And then we would walk back home. I would notice that actually her bundle of wood was not in the middle. There was a side that is protruding. And the part with thick wood was closer. I was so curious, what could this be happening? But the trouble started when we got home. He would start the fire, making the fire using my firewood. When I queried, she said, we don't start fire with logs. We start it with twigs. We don't start fire with logs. We start it with twigs. I hope you're gonna see this as I present. Sitting around the Imbaula. Now, if you look at the first fire I showed you, it was different from this one, which shows that culture is not static, but it evolves over years and it's dynamic. So they used Imbaula and would sit around, as I said earlier on, getting equal heat and telling of stories, and were to listen and so that we'll be able to tell those stories. In the morning, my father would then sprinkle the wood ash in the toilet because we were using a bucket system. When my son was born in 1994, my wife and I had bought a house in town. We were worried when we had to take him to the township because he had to use a bucket system. But because of the sentence, he wrote in his journal, he was able to use it as well. Here's a question. Could then the forest and home be regarded as schools for me then? What could be the problem behind the problem? When I started school, in fact, I failed because my right arm could not reach my left ear. That was the measurement that was used. I went back, the following was day I went to school. I didn't tell you this because pendulum. And thankfully, we're in a multi-grade class, sub A and sub B. And I ended up answering questions asked to sub Bs, so I was kept. So from school through to college, through to university, no reference was made to our socio-cultural background and the knowledge we had from home and community. Instead, we were made to memorize science concepts. Of course, we walked tall because we're getting A's, but we could not apply the science back home. Even writing of essays would be asked to write about a journey by train, yet you've never been on a train. Thankfully, my father worked in the railways, so I was better. I would relate the stories he used to tell us, and I would get a good essay. I don't blame our teachers and lecturers because that is how they themselves were taught. In fact, I regret that when I taught in the 1980s and 1990s, I myself did not take my learners' socio-cultural background seriously. Now, perhaps this is nicely captured here by Simpson. My experience of education from kindergarten to graduate school was one of coping with someone else's agenda, curriculum, pedagogy, someone who was neither interested in my well-being. My experience of education was of continually being measured against a set of principles that required surrender to an assimilative colonial agenda in order to fulfill those principles. So the disjuncture between home and school can have a negative effect on learners and students. And perhaps this is highlighted in my favorite poem, whose author is unknown. Perhaps it's one of you. You taught me the names of the cities in the world, but I don't know how to survive in the streets in my own city. You taught me the minerals that are in earth, but I do not know how to prevent my world's destruction. You taught me how to speak and write in 3 languages, but I do not know how to say what I feel in my heart. You taught me all about reproduction in rats, but I don't know how to avoid pregnancy. You taught me to solve maths problems, but I still can't solve my own problems. Yet, yes, you taught me many facts, and thank you, I'm quite clever. But why do I feel I know nothing? Why do I feel I have to leave school to go and learn about coping in life? Now let's come to fostering determination and resilience. On a positive note, though, we can't paint all teachers and all lecturers with the same paintbrush. There were exceptional teachers. I remember our primary school teacher ignited passion for mathematics and also introduced us in politics in a very smart way. So wish that mathematics could be compulsory to all people who want to be politicians. He used to ask us, do you really believe that you can do mathematics? Like Dr. Fairfoot said, really, do you think so? Dr. Fairfoot was responsible for Bantu education, which has segregated many of us in our country. Of course, because of those words were ringing in my ears all the time. When I was a teacher at Nombulelo, one of the reasons I came to Rhodes at that time, things had become better. So I took actually unpaid study leave. And my friends could not believe me. They thought, is this guy mad? And that year, I met a white brother. Apartheid told us, whites that side, blacks that side. They taught us a lot of othering. I met this white brother 35 years ago. We're doing mathematics together. I remember we loved complex analysis. We were fascinated by the fact that the square root of -1 is I. We thought, wow. We were told that, negative number is no square root. And our topology professor realized that we were only practicing complex analysis. He said, the world is not only complex, it is also topological. And that is none other than Dr. Ashley Westerway. We all have Ubuntu, believe you. We all have black and white. I think that is a gift from God. We all have. I remember our physics professor, Professor Bart, even the surname is scary. In his first physics lecture, he asked us, I would say, before I was a professor, a strange question. But now that I'm a professor, a rhetoric question. Who of you have done science at school? Were very few blacks in class. It was mainly whites. The hands of white students were like this. And I'm sure others even wanted to climb on chairs. But the poor blacks from the township, our hands were like this. He looked at us and said, I so wish you didn't do science at school, because we are all going to start afresh. We are going to do hors. And none of us, white and black students, did not know what hors were. I could see some of them turn pinkish because they were afraid of this animal. But just that moment, Prof. Bart made us to believe that regardless of our background, we will be able to learn mathematics. I pose a question then. What does it matter? Does it matter who we are? What do we do with the privilege that we have? I'll end my first story with this story. I have stories within stories. In Lima, to transform lives through community engagement activities, Ubuntu in practice. Mrs. Joyce Suri, to be precise, VC, we've been working together for 23 years now. And I've been trying to figure out, how did we meet and clicked? Because we complement one another very well. We started a microcamp kit project, and to make sure that hands-on practical activities were done in schools, in particular disadvantaged schools and under-resourced. And out of the evaluation which was done there, a sum of 1.5 million was received, and it was redirected to Transkei. And 2 decades ago, I started a project called Kula Project together with my former science teacher, Mr. Maselwa. By the way, he told me that he was given the name Rubin when the inspectors came to school. He had to have an English name, and then the teacher had to give him this and say, "Yeah, Rubin." So, and the purpose of that project was to make sure that learners from the disadvantaged schools in the township are able to come to our institution. Now, there's a guy here, many of them have done so well in life, but in the middle there, that is Dr. Tukulula Machawe. He was born in the street called Msengen. It's the roughest street here in Grahamstown. I'm sure he's the only doctor there. He came to Rhodes to do science, and he graduated his MSc with a distinction from Nyaluza, not from King's College or San Andrews. And then he proceeded to do his PhD in UCT and came back to do his postdoc here at Rhodes at the chemistry department. And he came to inspire the other Kula learners. And also Dr. Nase, Sukiswa Nase, and Ms. Nozipio Ambaze, and I, that one, were involved we're judging at the ESCOM Science Expo. We were worried by the lack of learners from the township schools. We were really deeply worried. And so we decided to collaborate and started a project which was given a name by the learners themselves. They say they want their name to be Sci-Fest Stars a project. We were hoping that they would give themselves a Xhosa name. Anyway, this guy here, if he has not completed his MSc in physics, he's close completing it from Thika. Through his project, Science Expo project, he got a gold medal and was awarded a Rhodes bursary. Our university is trying very hard. It's a great pity that apartheid did that to them in the past. Now, I've told you about my home background. Both of them. I apologize for not being gender sensitive here. Otherwise, there are great female learners who've done very well. Now, but what was unique about this project was that we researched it, and that student over there did her master's on this project. And Nozi also did his project on the community engagement project. Now, as I told you that, for me, the forest was a school, so we decided to collaborate with the Wild Reach students, a project to take learners up. And there you are collaborating with the chemistry department. Now, so there's a lot that you can do together. We must know that it takes a village to develop an academic. community engagement is part of being an academic at Rhodes University, and that is very close to my heart. Dr. Mabizela has been committed to taking the university to the community and community to Rhodes, and has led a defining breakthrough in success in collaboration with GADRA. Opening Rhodes to a hand up and second chance GADRA Matric School students through the remarkable 910 school mentoring in local schools is remarkable. So the second story is about the collaboration and partnership between GADRA. Now, those students you see there, Ms. Tabisa Boy told me that most of them are teachers now. They went through the GADRA program. And so they were celebrating with our humble VC. And I'm sure parents, you all want your children to come and celebrate with our VC. GADRA handout rather than handout. GADRA Education is the oldest non-governmental organization in Makhanda. Its vision is to transform education in order to transform lives of students from disadvantaged backgrounds. By the way, I'm the chairman of GADRA, and GADRA is old as me. So if you just look for my age, then you know the age of it. Or look for the age GADRA. As we all know that there are deep divisions that traverse South Africa. And education, sadly, this is so sad about our democracy. I don't know even whether to say it's an old democracy or new democracy. Because sadly, there's a shift from race to class. Those of us who can send their children to good schools can, and the majority are still disadvantaged. And the constitutional education is commodified instead of being a common good. The constitutional right to education does not exist in the lived reality of the vast majority of children and young people in the country. As a result, their dreams are shattered and thrown in that big hole. The reality is that there is a direct statistical relationship between one's level of education and one's employability, and that is undeniable. In South Africa, for instance, life without matric certificate is poor, nasty, brutish, and short, to use Hobbes' immortal words from the Leviathan. By contrast, however, the life prospects of those who manage to secure a degree from a reputable university are good. Therefore, for those who want to make a tangible difference in the lives of others, providing a hand up in relation to education is an effective intervention, as one can imagine. 47 years ago, I received a handout from GADRA Education in the form of a bursary to assist with school fees and books. And so is my former high school physical science teacher, who is also a GADRA bursar. So he would be saying 60 years ago. I used the hand up to get me up. And I would like to thank Mrs. Priscilla Hall and Mr. Mark Henderson, the GADRA stalwarts. Tonight, after all, it's my inaugural lecture as a professor of science education and a key moment in my journey from poverty to professor. My treasured bursary served as a catalyst for my lifelong passion for country. As I've said, I have served on the GADRA board for the past 20 years and as its chairman for the past decade. To this day, GADRA deliberately and effectively provides hand up to hundreds of children and young people in our city every year to its various programs. According to Achille Mbembe, there are more who increasingly believe that through self-organization and small ruptures, we can actually create myriad tipping points that may lead to deep alterations in the direction that both the content and the planet take. Remember, we don't start fire with logs. We started with tweaks. Indicators of success emerging from a combination of solid professionalism and humanistic values of GATA and Rhodes University are as follows. GATA is the biggest feeder school of Rhodes University. It's playing a pivotal role in the bridging program supported by Dr. Mabizela, our Vice Chancellor, and is the biggest producer of graduates. For example, in 2021, more than 50 GATA metric students graduated from Rhodes. I think this is worth clapping for. The Rhodes GATA partnership, the 9-10 mentoring program, this project was conceptualized by our Vice Chancellor, who really like to see a difference in our city. And in fact, I'm sure in our country. And it was implemented in 2016. It was piloted with 2 high schools, Tika and Merotas, and the rationale was to turn these schools into schools of excellence. And indeed, these schools, they don't have to be moved to town. They can be schools of excellence where they are. Thereafter, 2 more schools were added, Nombulelo and Kutliso. And there's a strong mentoring program of grade 12 learners using a highly structured year-long program. In 2019, for example, 32 learners from the 9-10th mentoring were accepted at Rhodes University, further 21 enrolled in Rhodes bridging courses, and 72% of the 9-10th learners receiving a strong metric pass, affording them an opportunity for tertiary. In 2020, the most difficult year in our lives, people did not fold arms. 9-10th program produced 89 bachelor passes from the 4 schools, 32 full-time Rhodes students, 26 bridging students at RU, 5 full-time students at other universities. Most importantly, Kutla Daniel's pass rate increased by 28%. Zika's bachelor level passes doubled, and there was 85% pass rate, surpassing even some former model schools. Rhodes University was awarded a first prize in the Mark-Janet Prize for the Global Citizenship because of its promotion and involvement in its students in the 9-10th mentoring. The Mark-Janet Prize Global Citizenship recognizes exemplary university student civic engagement programs around the world. And our VC, as usual, commended the student volunteers for such recognition and this significant milestone. All these stories are telling us about the possibilities which are there. Then I come to my last story, and apparently I'm the only one who's allowed to drink. The third story is about the power of community of practice as a catalyst for hand up, for our second chance in-service teachers. As you all know, community of practice is Wenger's theory, central to which it's learning, meaningful learning. In fact, Vygotsky himself says, if there's no learning, there can be no development. That is, learning precedes development. This story is a story about numerous teachers without degrees, but with experience attaining undergraduate and postgraduate degrees from Rhodes University. Now, let us set a scene a bit. The vast majority of Namibians have divided this into 2, Namibia and South Africa. The hand up or second chance given to in-service teachers without undergraduate degrees on the 20-year Rhodes Namibian program. The vast majority of Namibian in-service teachers had only a teacher's diploma, and the door was closed to them getting further higher education. In 1999, the Namibian government was proactive and approached Rhodes University to help open up doors. At the time, the South African BEd honors also allowed access to teachers with only a teacher's diploma. However, later, the SA policy changed to only admit people with an undergraduate degree, unless they were admitted via the national RPL policy, recognition of prior learning, Rhodes stepped in and quickly offered a 2-year part-time BEd, honors, and MEd, and later PhD study to these diploma teachers. The results have been spectacular over the 20 years, with almost 100 graduation rate of hundreds of students, and an almost guaranteed promotion by the ministry if you have a Rhodes degree. Our students now occupy many top education posts in Namibia. But how were these superb results achieved? Firstly, a willingness to open the university doors to diploma teachers to do postgraduate studies, a deep commitment by all of us to develop an approach to teaching and learning for their success, but not to compromise the exit standards. I want to emphasize that. We don't compromise standards. To really believe that these committed students can make it if provided the right mix of teaching and support. Perhaps this is my main message of my lecture. A lot of ongoing discussion, sharing among the staff about our teaching and the learning needs of the students. Herein lies the importance of being reflective and reflexive practitioners. We would like to acknowledge Professor George Hubert, who championed this initiative, Mrs. Ashlela van Harman, who is no longer with us, Mr. Robert Kraft, and many colleagues from the department. Now, developing a highly collaborative and safe classroom culture is very important. In our own science classroom, for example, we believe our success is due to the building of a community of practice. Now, that culture is informed by principles of Ubuntu, respect for each other's ideas, valuing each and everyone's contribution, and providing a non-threatening space. Also, working on solutions to real problems of Namibian and South African science classroom, students are encouraged to support one another and not to compete, to provide quality peer feedback in the classroom. And we believe in assessment for learning. My students will tell me. Using my own graduates to model the journey and teach and coach students, exploring, bringing local and traditional innovations and science insights into the modern science classroom. Most importantly, showing Ubuntu, nurturing and motivating our students to further their studies. Make them believe that they can do it. Here are some examples. Over there, it's my colleague, Richard Grant, who retired from the physics department, doing hands-on practical activities. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, we collaborate with Mrs. Joyce Suri. And an innovation we had in Namibia, we had 2 students who had come to Rhodes and were exposed on how to teach science using easily accessible resources, because there's a tendency for some teachers to say, I have no equipment, forgetting that actually the equipment is there in the environment. So these students went back to Namibia in 2018 to teach the honor students there while they were doing their master's research projects. Of course, our higher degrees committee was concerned with students doing research with other students. And I had to stand my ground and say, we need to research our own practice if we want to improve it. Now, the 2 students were awarded distinctions for their master's thesis. And my students' theses are not examined at Ngcoza. They're examined all over the world. One of the students, Estashina, who was part of that group, was a participant. The following year came to do masters at Rhodes full-time, and she was awarded a distinction for her thesis focusing on the use of easily accessible resources. And now she's doing PhD with me. And what a wonderful domino effect. Let's come to the possibilities of bringing local traditional innovation and science inside. Diversity is not a weakness, but it is a strength. Now, in 2017, the Department of Education chose 46 teachers to come and do in-service teaching to upgrade themselves here at Rhodes. And at that time, I was on sabbatical leave. When I came back, I was asked to coordinate that course. I learned that 19 of them could not carry on to their second year. And the ones that remained were so worried, saying, who's next? And Chris, who's from Zimbabwe, I advised him to do his PhD with these students. And he surprised all of us. He burst in a song, Dibambe Kesanta Tingawi Emlilweni Dibambe Kesanta Tingawi Emlilweni. That song alone lifted the spirit of those teachers, and they all completed. And 4 of them carried on to do honors with us, and sadly, one of them succumbed to COVID-19 last year. But the 3 that have remained are hoping to carry on to masters. So as part of this project, because we've been talking about decolonization, by the way, decolonization doesn't mean throw away the westernized science. There's no such thing as Western, it's westernized. I mean, there's no way that we can throw away, but what decolonization says, other knowledges have been denigrated and invisibilized. I told you that Rhodes was a promised land. So why would Rhodes at that time then accept the knowledge from the township? It wouldn't. So we invited Mama Nodingo. Quite interestingly, another thing we like is ethics. And sometimes in the process of being careful about ethics, we become ourselves unethical and blind and fold people's eyes, blind them, and give them pseudonyms. In our culture, there's a way to level power gradients. We use clan names. My students call me Tim. So we invited Mama Nolunga to come and do a practical demonstration on making umkomboti, which is a traditional alcoholic beverage. It's only 3% alcohol content. Remember, that is the mkomboti my mother did 50 years ago. I regret I did not watch at that time. We didn't tell Mama Nodingo how to dress, but she came dressed that way and talk about the respect and values. So we say to our university, we should not be talking about only epistemological access. We should also be talking about ontological and exological access in our universities. Now, I'll just do the highlights. I'm mindful of time. What fascinated me, Mama Nodingo and us, we've been working for more than 5 years now. And I think I'm the first professor at Rhodes to do umkomboti here. That's why the ancestors are so happy about it. So Mama fascinated me because this was kept in my office PC. And she said to me, Anna, because she's my aunt, she's married to my wife's uncle. He said, early in the morning, very early, go to the office, go and open calabash, and then take a matchstick and bring it closer. If it goes off, then don't cover it again, then because you must know that Ngcoza is ready to be seen. When I asked Mama, why Mama? Now remember, one of the things we have to try and fight in our culture is this culture of not children asking parents. Children learn through asking. We need to encourage our parents to understand that. They said that if you close it again, it should be a closed system, Ngcoza would be sour. And then the science teachers had to reason, where is the science behind it? Please make time to read Dr. Chris Mutano's PhD thesis. It's groundbreaking. It's 100 times even better than mine. Now, as I said, that decolonization does not mean throw away the Western ways of doing science. And here are the students are doing science there, experimenting with solutions. Now, but what I want to highlight is that 2 teachers who were in that group were awarded, received awards for being best teachers. That one, Mrs. Masiza, in 2019, and this one, Mr. Mkhalisa, this year, 2021, which means that they've gone back and put into practice what they have learned. Now, we're also taking indigenous knowledge beyond our horizon to Japan, for example, because we collaborate the project with Japan, Zambia, Namibia, and we're focusing on integration of IK and lesson studies. And Dr. Zuki Nase, who I call my daughter, who graduated a PhD last year, we ate the raw octopus for the first time. and I said to her, that's why we like to collaborate, because of those tentacles. Our first democratically elected president, Madiba, once wrote, he wrote in his book, education is the great engine of personal development. It is through education that the daughter of a peasant can become a doctor, that the son of a mine worker can become the head of the mine, and that a child of farm workers can become the president of a great nation. I think when you read, watch out for the last sentences. It is what we make out of what we have, not what we are given, that separate one person from another. Mama Nodingo, with her knowledge and wisdom, today she has produced a doctor, Dr. Christine Mutano. Let's give Mama Nodingo. It is what we make out of what we have, not what we are given, that separates one person from another. I've got some few concluding remarks. What emerges from these stories is that through Ubuntu and orientated approaches and hand up, students' diverse social-cultural background count. As I said earlier on, diversity is a strength. Other ways of knowing, doing, thinking, and being should be recognized. That is a decolonization agenda. Sometimes very small things can still be trajectory, shift the trajectory of people's lives. New possibilities can be created for students, can develop a sense of agency and motivation among students. Providing a hand up student is not lowering standards, but can involve the preservation of high standards and strength. Can prioritize, there's a need to prioritize student outcomes within what we can afford all else. We need to create a supportive and collaborative culture in our institutions and classroom. The challenge is that more needs to be done. When you have dropouts that is a sign of the need to look for possible ways to develop hand-up strategies. That is what motivated the Gardner Matric School and the development of the 910s mentoring program to eliminate or reduce dropouts. When you have closed doors to capable and committed people because of an missing gateway standard, that is a signal to look to see if catch-up programs might be the way forward. When you have challenges of adjustment to university life and the need for more learning support for students in the need, there's a need for a strong culture of community of practice. As a way forward, I'd like to propose that let us set as a university goal to reduce dropout of students, devote money and people at Rhodes to research best practices in South Africa, South African universities and internationally, and our own efforts to reduce dropout students. Commit to measure our creativity and performance in offering handout to our students once in the university. Given our success with our mentoring program, which should be a model for all of us in South Africa in the local schools as a mentoring program for first-year students at university is worth exploring. There's a need to intensify research in collaboration with communities on intervention. That is, community-engaged research should be part of the intellectual scholarship, not an add-on. On a final note, Bembe once said, to reopen the future of our planet to all who inhabit it, we'll have to learn how to share it again amongst humans, but also between humans and non-humans. Between multiple species that populate our planet, it is only under these conditions that becoming aware of our precariousness as species in the face of ecological threats will be able to overcome the possibility of outright human extinction opened up by this new epoch, the epoch of Anthropocene. When I was 5 years old, my mother told me that I was taken to the doctor, and I said she used to have a beautiful smile when telling the story. And I said to her, Nazi inyawo, Nansi indlela, which translates to here are the feet and here is the road. Tiabuyela, tialebuha, danki unene, thank you, baya danki, vielen dank, spasibo, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ken, for really a thought-provoking inaugural lecture. Let me invite Dr. Westerway to convey our appreciation to you. Lisa.
But I don't want you to disappear again.
By the way, the song she has just sung says, I'm like this because of my mom. And to us, gentlemen, please, down with abuse of women. Please, thank you, Cecilia.
Professor Ken.
Am I?
Professor Ngcoza. But Professor Ken, as your students like to refer to you out of respect and endearment. Thank you very much for the presentation this evening, for sharing your beautiful stories with us and with such pride. I want you to know that I have read your 2 articles that you referred to earlier on, that you and Sue wrote. the one in Perspectives of Education and the one in Pythagoras. And VC, you'll be very pleased to note that Pythagoras is the journal for the Association for Maths Education in South Africa. So Ken, that article that you wrote with Sue called Professional Networks as Spaces of Learning, I think is really important in terms of what you were saying this evening. In that article, you draw on the work of Lev and Wenger, who you've already spoken about, and particularly Wenger, to talk about the importance of communities of practice as learning spaces, and as you said, as meaningful learning spaces. In that article, you developed a framework for analyzing and explaining the data, which looked at the spaces within communities of practice. And you spoke about three spaces: the spaces within, the spaces between, and the spaces beyond. As I listen to your stories today, I see those spaces. I see the spaces within your familial community of practice, your community of practice, your professional community of practice, your second story, and your scholarship and academic community of practice with your colleagues and with your students. These are the spaces within the community of practices in which you live and in which you work. Then, and I'm going to tweak your work slightly and talk about the spaces between as being the interaction of your communities, the home community, the GADRA professional community, and the academic community. For me, the most important part is the space beyond. And that's where I think your contribution has really been. And we as a Department of Education really value. And that is, well, I shouldn't just say as a Department of Education, as a university, and that is the space beyond. The space beyond is in your students. They are the ones, your in-service teachers that you are working with in Namibia and in South Africa, your masters and PhD students or scholars, as you refer to them, they have created their own communities of practice that you have inspired. And they will continue to recreate those communities of practice, welcoming new people into those communities of practice. And so I thank you for that valuable contribution that you have made that is going to outlive your time at Rhodes University.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I have one last thing that I want to just mention, that, and I want to take you back to the African proverb that you mentioned at the beginning of the talk. You've walked far. You've walked very far. You're the professor. You're our professor. But you've walked far because you've always walked in the company of others. Yeah. And so we have a lot to learn from you in relation to that. So, Ken, on behalf of the VC, DVC, the deans, HODs, your colleagues at Rhodes University, we would like to give you this small gift to say thank you for your presentation tonight and congratulations on everything.
Thank you very much.
I want to just say thank you for everyone for joining us on this auspicious occasion. VC, DVC, the deans, Ken, your colleagues. I wish that you were standing looking at this wall when Dr. Mabizela was introducing you, because the number of messages that just kept coming up, wishing you congratulations. It was just absolutely astounding. So I hope that that chat is going to be kept for you.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Lisa.
So thank you very much, everyone who's been here, especially Cynthia and Ngcoza for giving us Ken and allowing us the privilege to work with him. And yeah, I think that at this point, it's important for us to go and celebrate and to just join us in the foyer, just to celebrate with Ken. And Ken, I really hope, I mean, we know the university's policy on alcohol during the exam period, but I really hope there's a glass of red wine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Thank you, colleagues. Have a good evening. Let's go to the concourse and celebrate this incredible achievement.